Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Be seated. All right, your next witness.
Your Honor, we'd like to call Laura Amber Heard to the stand.
All right.
Amber Laura.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to testify truthfully in this case to be of law?
I do.
All right, thank you. All right.
Thank you, Your Honor. Will you please state your name
Yes, it's Amber Laura Heard.
and what is your address?
I live in Yucca Valley, California.
And how old are you, Amber?
I am 36. I just celebrated.
Okay. And do you have a daughter?
I do. She also celebrated her birthday recently. She's 1.
Okay. And what is your profession?
I am an actor, mostly.
Okay. Now, why are you here?
I am here because my ex-husband is suing me for an op-ed I wrote.
And how do you feel about that?
I struggle to have the words. I struggle to find the words to describe how painful this is. This is horrible for me to sit here for weeks and relive everything. Hear people that I knew, some well, some not. My ex-husband, with whom I shared a life, speak about our lives in the way that they have. This is the most painful and difficult thing I've ever gone through, for sure.
Now, there was a trial in the UK in July of 2020 where Mr. Depp had sued the Sun newspaper and Dan Wooten. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And what was your level of participation in that lawsuit, in that trial?
Well, I was not party to that lawsuit. I was a witness, I suppose the primary witness, since it dealt with the truth of the relationship that I shared with Johnny.
And what, if any, role did you have to play with respect to, for example, witness statements and testifying?
Objection, compound.
I said, for example.
Overruled.
I had to write, I think I gave 7 witness statements under oath testimony. I sat on the stand for 4 days under mostly cross-examination. And up until this point, it was the hardest thing I had ever had to do.
Thank you, Amber. I'm going to take you back, and if you can just tell the jury a little bit about your background. Tell us where you grew up.
I come from Austin, Texas, a small town outside of Austin that you probably haven't heard of. No one has. It's called Manor. And I was raised by my mother and my father, and I grew up with a little sister, although I have a big sister as well.
And your little sister's name is?
Her name is Whit Heard.
And how much of an age difference is there between the two of you?
Whitney and I are about 1 year, I think we're 16 months apart, so right next to each other.
And what did your father do for a living?
My father broke horses and did construction, he painted houses, and hunted and fished, but that was for fun.
And what did your mom do?
She worked for the state of Texas.
Let me just, since you talked about the breaking horses, can you just tell the jury what your role is in assisting your dad on that and what is involved in breaking horses?
Objection, leading.
can you just tell me about?
Overruled, good.
You just got to stay on, basically. I would help him. I was more of a crash test dummy. You know, when you train a horse, it's a wild animal. It doesn't necessarily like to be ridden. And there are people out there who are crazy enough, like my dad, to pick that as a profession, I guess. And he was really good with horses, and I was the son he never had, so it was my job to, stay on.
And what, if anything, did you learn from your father about how to react to the horses?
Well, with training horses, I guess the key things are to not show fear, not get intimidated, not show fear, be tough and calm.
Tell the jury a little bit about your educational background during those growing up years and your work experience.
I worked any job that I could from the time I was really young. I wanted to get out of Texas and do something with my life and see things and do things. So I was in school and really pushed myself to, I just always pushed myself to be able to accelerate the process. I wanted to, get out of school as fast as I could, and I wanted to do more things with my life than stay in Texas.
So what types of things, so where did you go to school when you were younger?
I was a scholarship kid at a Catholic school growing up, several different Catholic schools, but they were always in the other, on the other side of town, in the wealthier part of town. And I grew up quite working class, and thankfully with, as long as I maintained an A average, I enjoyed the benefit of a scholarship, and I did that until I realized that I could take my GED and SATs early, and I did that and placed out of school and effectively left school at 16 years old, I believe.
And what did you do for work during those younger years?
I took any job that I could. I worked at my father's construction company, sometimes, just administrative stuff. I mean, it was a small company. But I answered phones, and I worked at a modeling agency that was also, offered photography classes, makeup classes, hair and makeup classes for people that were pursuing a career in entertainment. And I started taking classes that I paid for by working there, effectively as a trade. And I eventually worked there long enough to be able to pay for my headshots, which are the pictures that you use in the industry to promote yourself, in whatever, acting, modeling, or both.
Okay. And what, if any, charitable work did you do when you were still young?
It started off as a requirement for the school I went to, and then I liked it so much, I think, because it meant I wasn't at home, and that was important to me, is just to not spend time at home. And I really loved meeting people, so I worked at the soup kitchen every morning before school, during the school year, for about 4 years. I didn't go on weekends, but on weekends I would do various things. Worked at children's museums, typically, because they would work with younger volunteers, and mostly soup kitchens and things involving children. I worked at with deaf kids for a while, and I love it.
And when you worked with deaf kids, what, if anything, did you do to learn to be able to work with them?
Objection leading and 404. And relevance, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Well, I taught myself how to sign basic sign language, and then I I pursued it. I audited a course at the community college, which I ended up going to get out of high school early later on. But I would audit classes. The teachers never wanted to kick the, random 12-year-old out of their class, I suppose. So I remarkably was able to audit, I think, the majority of 2 semesters, and that's also helped me learn.
So how did you end up in Los Angeles?
I did a small job in Texas where I played a part in a movie, and the actor in the movie that I was playing opposite had an agent visiting him from LA, and I met her on set, and she said that she had heard about me from another bit part I did. I was taking jobs in Austin for really anything, to be an extra, to apply I did makeup once. Nothing, no job was too small or, for me. So I put myself out there, and she had heard about me, and she said, I have heard about you in this town, and I'd love to meet you in LA if you're ever out in LA. And I was like, when can I come? And she made an appointment with me for the following week, and I used all but $180 or something to get out there, and I landed. I didn't know anyone. I was 17, and I've effectively been there ever since, I suppose.
So when you arrived in Hollywood, please tell the jury what you did to get moving there, get going.
I went to every audition, every casting, every meeting, every appointment that I could. I put myself out there. I didn't have a car because those were expensive, so I took the bus around LA. It was before smartphones. I had a Thomas guide in my bag and a change of tank tops. Not that it mattered, but I went to about 10 auditions sometimes a day, and would change clothes if I needed to in the back of the bus I was taking, and I just hustled from one audition to the other. And I got a bit part on one thing, and then I got a bit part on another thing, and then eventually my roles kind of became more important or bigger, and it's been a slow progression, I guess, since then, of doing either tiny bit parts in bigger movies or doing, larger roles in movies that no one would see. And I guess, it still is kind of like that.
So I'm going to ask you to go from 2002 to 2009. If you could just describe for the jury a little bit what types of parts you had. I think they've indicated you have not been well known here in this courtroom compared to Mr. Depp. So perhaps just take them through a little bit of that.
Yeah, that's fair. I did small roles in big films like Zombieland and Pineapple Express, and movies that were well known. My first one was Friday Night Lights, but again, I had small roles in those bigger films, and then I would do larger roles in kind of smaller films. Like I did a project where I was the lead in a John Carpenter film, and he came out of retirement to do that. And that's kind of how it was in terms of my career for those that first initial 10 years or so. It was just going from slightly bigger role to slightly bigger role, and just working my butt off.
So I'm going to take you up to 2008. Did there come a time that you auditioned for The Rum Diary?
Yes, I auditioned for that in about 2008, I believe.
Please describe for the jury your experience in auditioning for The Rum Diary.
Well, I auditioned a few times, which is common in my work. You get a call back, as they say. And I think I had at least one, maybe two callbacks with the director. And then I got a call saying that Johnny, who at the time was, I think I knew that he was producing it as well, was doing a project that was something very personal to him. He was reprising his role as his late friend, Hunter S. Thompson, and it was a very important project to him, and that he wanted to meet me in person. I thought I would be going for maybe an audition, but it was just a meeting. I went to his office and met with him for a few hours.
And what did you talk about during those few hours?
We talked about books and music, poetry. We liked a lot of the same stuff, obscure writers and, interesting books and pieces of poetry that I haven't heard anybody else reference or know or like. And he was very well read and charismatic, and I think I left the office with a few books that he gave me, and we spent the whole time just talking about things that we care about. And I was so surprised that somebody, I knew who he was. I wasn't familiar, I wasn't a fan of his work. I wasn't familiar with him, but I knew who he was. He's one of the most famous people in the world. So it was already a weird thing to go and get called into his office. And, I'm a no-name actor. I was 22, I think. And I thought it was unusual. It was weird because he was twice my age, and he's this world-famous actor. And here we are getting along about obscure books and weird, old blues. And I thought it was remarkable. I thought it was unusual and remarkable. I left there just feeling like, wow.
So did there come a time that you learned that you were going to be cast for the role in The Rum Diary?
Yes, a few days later, my agent said that Johnny's going to call you. We gave him your phone number. I was like, oh, okay. And shortly after, my phone rings, I pick it up, and I hear, this like deep voice on the other line, and he said, "You got you're it, kid. You're the dream. Hunter wrote this part, and you're the dream. You're it, kid." I was like,
and
amazed.
Please describe for the jury what that means. What was the Rum Diary and this Hunter Thompson? What was the concept here, and what role were you playing?
Well, it was my understanding that he was bringing to life his late friend. And what he told me was that this character is supposed to be the dream woman, like the dream, American dream. And so I knew what he meant. He indicated to me when he told me I got the role that I was that, that I was the dream kid. That's what he said.
So did there come a time that you started filming The Rum Diary?
Yes, I'm not quite sure how much. I think we started filming in maybe March of 2009.
And where did you film The Rum Diary?
We shot it in Puerto Rico.
And describe, if you can, the events of the filming and your interactions with Mr. Depp during that time.
It was a bit surreal, filming in a place like Puerto Rico. It was beautiful. It takes place in the 50s, so everything really looked beautiful, and cars and clothing, the music. It was a very colorful shoot in general. I couldn't have asked for a better scenario. I was on film. I was on set reading my books, and occasionally Johnny would talk to me, and then he started to be really kind to me, like more open with me. When we'd have hot days filming, there'd be this big SUV pull up, and a security guard would kind of usher me into this car, and it would have the AC blasting, and I'd be sitting in the back of the SUV just thinking what a strange experience the whole thing was. And we didn't really have a whole lot of interaction on set until we did a scene that involved kissing. We had a kissing scene, and it didn't feel like a normal. It didn't feel like a normal scene anymore. It felt more real. There are certain things that you do in the job to be professional, like when you have to do that sort of scene, and you don't you don't use your tongue if you can avoid it. There's certain things that you do to just maintain a certain line, and it just felt like those lines were blurred. I mean, he grabbed my face and pulled me into him and really kissed me. But we were filming a scene.
Did he use his tongue?
Yes.
Okay. Did you celebrate your birthday while you were in Puerto Rico?
I did. I celebrated, I think, maybe my 23rd birthday there.
And what, if anything, did Mr. Depp do for your birthday?
Well, we were already kind of talking about books and poetry and things like that. He gave me a few really beautiful poetry books. And he gave me a bicycle, like a vintage bicycle, because at the time I was riding around on a bike, and I had a lot of time off since I was a smaller role in the movie. And yeah, I think that was it.
Okay. Now, did there come a time that you ended up visiting him in his trailer?
Yes, I think there was we would hang out if, after or in between scenes or in between setups. We often were, talking about things and would continue the conversation into the trailer, often with the director. Bruce Robinson was his name. And then at one point, we talk about wine. It's another thing that Johnny and I shared in common, a love for wine, red wine. And we were talking about a kind of wine that I enjoyed, and I was, going on about how great this bargain wine was, and I didn't understand, how much more sophisticated Johnny's taste in wine was. So I was going on about the virtues of Malbec or something, and I brought him a bottle of this wine, and I set it down. And at some point, I'm going back to get back to set, and he kind of kicked his foot up in the air and basically kind of lifted the back of my bathrobe up. And
Can I just stop you there? Why were you wearing a bathrobe?
because I was doing a scene, it was a period film, so it took place in the 50s. And so I had all of this old undergarments that are for that time era on. And the scene involved me changing. So I had all the costume on. And he kind of picked up the back of my robe with his boot. And I kind of turned around and laughed, giggled, I didn't know what to make of it at the time. And I just kind of giggled and batted it away playfully. And he kind of playfully kind of pushed me down on this bed sofa that was in his trailer, just playful and flirtatious. And he said, "Yum." And he kind of lifted up his eyebrows like that. And I just giggled, laughed it off, kind of batted him away, and, moved on, went back to set.
And were you in a relationship at that time?
I was.
Okay. And was Mr. Depp in a relationship at that time?
That was my understanding, yeah.
Okay. And did anything else of significant happen during that time period while you were filming with Mr. Depp, other than what you've told us?
We just had this, it was a friendship, a flirtatious thing. I felt chemistry. I felt this other thing that went beyond the pale of my job, for sure. Johnny clearly felt that way about me, had indicated to me that that's how he felt in many different ways. But at the same time, we were both in relationships, and it is a job, and, it was intimidating, and I just remember feeling kind of intimidated and a little nervous about that. And I also was in a relationship, so we went our separate ways, and I didn't hear from him for a long time.
And that's, so approximately how long were you filming in Puerto Rico for the Rum Diary?
A few months is my best
All right,
guess.
and when you left Puerto Rico and the filming, when is the next time that you had any contact from Mr. Depp? And contact could include anything, communications, written communications, as well as telephone or otherwise.
We had no contact until Johnny called me on the phone one day, and I was driving, and he invited me over to his home in California, Beverly Hills, and I it was out of the blue. I didn't even have his phone number, so it was quite unexpected. He called me a second time, but I don't think we actually connected, or we didn't stay on the phone because we didn't really speak. But the first time was the only time I actually spoke to him, and he invited me over to his house under kind of he said that, we could get Bruce, who was the director, to come over, something about the movie, but it was clearly not about the movie, if you know what I mean. It was, so I said, I said my friends are in town, and I'm busy with that, and kind of hung up, feeling really startled, that didn't know what else to do.
What, if any, gifts did Mr. Depp send you during that time period after you filmed the Rum Diary?
He sent me several gifts. He sent me a beautiful dress, one that I wore in the movie, with a beautiful handwritten note, said happy wrapping, and made a reference to the dress being wrapping paper. He sent me a few gorgeous, expensive, what I can only assume are expensive to deliver, and called me immediately and said, what should I do? And I said, send it back. And she did. And she indicated that at the time, there was another one that had already previously attempted delivery, and it was also rejected. I sent it back because I wasn't there, and I wouldn't have accepted it anyway.
Okay. Did there come a time that you ended up having to go on a press tour for the Rum Diary?
I got a call for the Rum Diary press tour in the fall of 2011.
So that's close to 2.5 years after you filmed?
I'm an actress, not a mathematician for a reason. Roughly, yes.
Okay. And could you please describe for the jury what a press tour is? Just explain it to them.
Well, you take a movie once it's completed, and if it doesn't have distribution, as part of the promotion of that movie, you go to these various places, normally cities like London or New York, and you do press events in those cities to kind of promote the film, and you go to place talking about the film.
And so you were then called to participate in the press tour for the Rum Diary?
Yes, I had just finished going through the process of separation with my former partner, and I was moving and going through that, and I got a phone call saying, remember that movie you did in Puerto Rico? Well, they want you for the press tour. And I said, well, perfect timing. And we did that, I think, late October 2011.
Okay. So describe for the jury your interactions with Mr. Depp during the press tour.
Well, on the first stop, the beginning of the tour was Los Angeles, where we both lived, and we did a press day, normal press day, and then at the end of